Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coffee Connection Live. We are so glad that you're here with us today. We're so excited today to be joined by Senior Chief Culinary Specialist Scott Jefferies. Sit back, relax, and let's make some friends. So welcome, Chef Jefferies. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. First, thank you all for inviting me to be on the show. I've been working with the USO for a lot of years now in different capacities. So to have this opportunity is really an honor. So thank you so much for that. So a little bit about myself. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida originally. I joined the Coast Guard in 2010 and obviously been traveling around ever since then. Prior to joining the Coast Guard, I have 10 years of civilian culinary experience, everything from washing dishes to bussing tables to managing restaurants and all the in between. Just found a passion for cooking at a young age, watching my mom and my aunt and grandparents, do their thing in the kitchen. I always wanted to be involved in that, and so it just kind of led naturally down that career path, and found myself as a culinary specialist in the Coast Guard. And 12 years later, here I am.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories about kids people who grew up wanting to help in the kitchen and are now following those dreams. I have kids who often want to help in the kitchen. And as hard as that is for me as a mom who likes to keep a clean and like really efficient cooking space, I have to stop and remember that someday they might be a chef cooking for lots of people. And so I should let them explore that creativity and that urge to get in there, right?
Very important, because my experience was usually get out of here and go play with your brothers or cousins or whatever. But I always kind of, peered from around the corner and then, tried to get involved as much as I could. And eventually they caved and let me get started.
So Scott, you told us that you are from Fort Lauderdale. At what point did you join the Coast Guard?
So I've been working for a company down there for about 6 years at the time. And I met my now wife, Annie, and she was working more of like a 9 to 5 type job, working in pharmacy. And I was working the typical, restaurant schedule, nights and weekends. And so our schedules just weren't working out. So I knew I needed to make some sort of a career change. And for some reason, I thought joining the military would give myself more availability, which for the first couple of years, that was not the case. I was on boats for 6.5, 7 years straight in the beginning of my career. But it was great because, you still in the Coast Guard, we might go out for a couple months at a time, but we're very fortunate in the sense that most of our work is done, from the area, from home. So got to spend a lot of time, with my wife and us exploring and traveling and growing together in that sense. And it ended up giving me more time than I ever imagined to be able to do that. So yeah, it just thought the Coast Guard would be a really cool opportunity, and it's been the best decision we ever made. And I highly encourage anyone who's thinking about it, especially in the culinary side of things, to explore the culinary program that the Coast Guard has to offer. And if anybody ever has any questions, feel free to share that information with them, and they can contact me at any time.
Can you tell us more about I know it's kind of a loaded question, but what's it like to be a culinary specialist in the military? I mean, you're cooking for masses, sometimes in ships, sometimes in homes. Can you tell us more about, just kind of looking back on your career so far, what's it been like? How would you summarize it?
It's been very rewarding, that's for sure. My first unit was what we would consider a larger boat in the Coast Guard. Coast Guard being much smaller, we do get to cook a little bit more intimately than, say the Army or the Marine Corps or any of the other branches that are cooking for, thousands of people at a time. Our largest dining facility in the Coast Guard feeds about 500 per meal, which is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. But my experience started on a 225-foot buoy tender and what we call duty cooking. So making breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a crew of 50 people on that boat. And it's tough because you're doing that pretty much independently. You have a very small team and you're pretty much just taking shifts of who's cooking while the other person's, sort of getting their rest and whatnot for the next shift. But you learn every aspect of being a chef and being in culinary, from planning the menus, from ordering to executing the meals to even cleaning up. But it's great because you get to really take ownership in what it is that you're doing. And then, as your jobs change, as the ranks change, the structure of the boats change, and you get to experience many different platforms in the Coast Guard. We only stay somewhere for 2, 3, maybe 4 years at a time before we're transferring to a different unit. And I always tell the story is that when I was stationed in North Jersey, one day I was 40 miles offshore when we were tracking down. I think at that time that mission we were doing was illegal fishing, right? So a lot of foreign vessels coming in and illegally fishing our waters. So I was there doing that one day, and then I transferred to a river tender in Kentucky, so an inland river tender. And less than a week later, I am in a cornfield assembling what we call a RON tower, which is for aids to navigation on the waterways, all within the same week. So it's just super versatile, and you kind of get to experience every aspect of what the Coast Guard has to offer.
And I would imagine that being in those different situations, you really have to plan out the meals quite a ways. We've heard a lot from military spouses that meal planning in general is of interest and sometimes is of concern. So can you give us some tips on how you plan meals? Maybe not for 500 people. I don't know how many of us are cooking for that many people, but
some of us have big families, though.
Some of us do have big families. That's true. And our kids eat a lot. But if you were to give us some tips on planning out meals, even for a week at a time or for 3 days at a time, where should we start and what should we take into consideration?
Yeah, of course. That's a really important thing because our time is very important, right? And we're limited on it. So some things that we do in my house is we try to set aside one day a week, and it's usually like a Sunday evening, and my wife and I will just we'll prep out enough food for the next 4 or 5 days. And it's a lot easier to do it when you do have a culinary background, but it's not something that anybody at home can't do. And so a good rule of thumb is to make sure you have like adequate storage containers. So basically we use small black meal prep containers. And when we're cooking things that we know are going to have a decently long shelf life. We usually don't mess with breakfast. We do our breakfast each morning because it's quick and it's easy. But we make sure that we do things that are able to be stored for a few days at a time for lunches and dinners, so we can just kind of take and go as we please. Really good things are ground meats. So you got ground turkey, ground chicken, ground beef, and you can make like a meat sauce. And then that meat sauce can go on top of rice. It can go on top of pasta. It can go on top of roasted potatoes. It's very versatile in that sense. And then utilization of frozen vegetables, I think, is very important. And I'm not talking like, frozen vegetables, just like peas, carrots, and lima beans, like you ate as a kid. But you can get good quality, frozen broccoli and green beans and all these things that are nutrient packed. And frozen vegetables, believe it or not, a lot of times are actually more nutritious than fresh vegetables, because a lot of the fresh vegetables that we're eating have spent a lot of time traveling before they get to our grocery stores. So the fresh vegetables, or frozen vegetables rather, especially the stuff that says, flash frozen when fresh and that sort of thing, have all those nutrients sort of locked in, and then just cook them gently so you don't destroy all of that. And you have yourself a nice balanced meal. So we'll take the frozen vegetables and put them right in with whatever protein and starch that we're having, and not even defrost them until we go to heat that up later and have them for our meals.
Super helpful. I can see in the chat box people are relating to this and sharing their experiences with meal prep. And I immediately think back to like, not really a traumatizing experience, but a few years ago, I really tried to get into meal prep. We were living overseas. My husband was working long hours. My kids were small. I was working, and I started baking chicken breasts at the beginning of the week. Like I'd bake 3 of them and I'd slice them up and I would have them ready to go. Maybe you can help me out here though. I'm like traumatized against chicken breasts now because for some reason they would always come out rubbery. Do you have any tips on how to make a chicken breast actually taste good when you're cooking it ahead of time?
So I would, if you're doing like a boneless, skinless chicken breast, I would steer away from baking it, because the baking it, it does tend to, after it sits for a bit, get a little rubbery. My favorite thing to do is to kind of butterfly them out so they're a little bit thinner. So just take a thick chicken breast, split it down half, the lengthwise. So it's, kind of a bigger portion of chicken, if you will, and then season it, marinate it, and then grill it. Grilling it seems to kind of keep things from getting too rubbery when you do that. And what's great is grill is a large service. You can cook a lot of chicken. So if you have a large family and you get 10 pieces of chicken breast, you can grill that off and then slice it. And that's super versatile because you can use it in salads. You can use it just as a grilled chicken breast. You can make soups with it. You do all sorts of things. And so what we'll usually do is we do a lot of rotisserie chickens too. It's a quick way to have $5 at your commissary. You get a nice quality, large roasted chicken. You have one of the meals where you use the breast, one of the meals where you use the dark meat, and then you take the rest of it and you can make a nice soup out of, making stock with the bones and that sort of thing. And then, your remainder of the meat, add some vegetables and you're good to go. So it's just my wife now. We don't have any kids. So I know that that's, different than many military families. However, just two of us, we can get 3 meals each out of one rotisserie chicken. So like I said, the breast is one, the leg and thigh, the other, and then a soup out of what's remaining.
I love that. Thank you for that. I have so many more questions, but I'll try to stick to what we said we'd talk about. I want to take it back. I want to take it back to how you said you're in the DC area, and I know you've had some involvement with the local USO there in the Metro DC area. Specifically, something that you mentioned to us ahead of time is the USO Chef's Table Experience. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's been our favorite thing right now that we're currently working. So we did a lot of healthy cooking classes for the USO, and they have an amazing kitchen space at our local USO, actually two, one in Bethesda, Maryland, and then one in Fort Belvoir, which is in Virginia. And both have, nice 6-burner range and, oven and a big island through the center of the kitchen space. And so me and a colleague of mine were sitting there talking. I said, this would be a great way to be able to invite people to sit right here at this counter, and we cook for them a multi-course dinner. And so we did some brainstorming and figuring out all the logistics, and we figured we can host 12 guests at a time. And we're able to showcase 6 courses and 6 different military chefs each time we do it. And so and I could also share some links with you all as well, if that's something that we can, put out there, because it'd be really cool for everyone to see the stuff that we're doing. I have a buddy of mine who's a photographer, videographer, and that sort of thing. So he's put together some really cool media stuff for us to showcase it. But we're showcasing military chefs from all around the area, and basically inviting veterans, active duty members, and then their guests of choice to enjoy a meal that would be served at a Michelin level restaurant. I mean, the stuff that these chefs are putting out, they're just unbelievable. And we're giving them full reign to do anything that they want to do within the budget that we're allowed, but not restricting them to their creativity. So whatever it is that they want to showcase, that event they can showcase. So sometimes we'll have 3 savory items and 3 desserts, because that's what the chefs want to do. And it's just a small tasting. I say that, but as you eat 6 courses, it tends to fill you up either way. But that's been an awesome project. So I want to shout out Melgen over at the Fort Belvoir USO for making all that possible, and her team. She's been so amazing to work with and help take this thing to where it's at. And it's a quarterly thing. We're about to do our 4th one in April. And that'll wrap up the full year of our Chef's Table event. So year 1 will be in the books the 2nd week of April.
That sounds incredible. What a neat experience for people to be able to eat that quality of food at the USO once a quarter. Shout out to USO, the National Capital District. We appreciate everything you guys do. Big high fives. And if they wanted to learn more about that, Scott, do you happen to know the website that they would check, or is it just the USO's website?
The USO's Facebook page is really good about sharing it. I know if they're local to the DC area, pop into the Fort Belvoir USO Family Warrior Center. I think I got that all in the right order. But they'll have a lot of events there that they're showcasing, and that's one of them. And then I believe it's a lottery-based system. We're getting quite a bit of interest in those joining. In order to keep it intimate the way we're doing, and we plate everything and finish everything right in front of the guests, and it's amazing.
And then another thing that you're doing with the USO is the monthly cooking classes. Is that still going on, or is that a thing of the past? But tell us about it, please.
No, that is definitely still going on. So it's not we try to do it every month. During COVID, actually, that allowed us to do it more because a lot of the military chefs weren't as busy as we normally are. Because a lot of events were canceled as a result of that. So, but we were doing them virtually, so it allowed us to do it once a month pretty regularly. We aim for once a month, but obviously our operational schedules, kind of come into play. But it has been pretty consistent. So pretty much I have a network of military chefs in the area, and I'll work with Melgen at the Fort Belvoir USO, and we will reach out and ask who wants to do it each month. And if anyone's available, then we'll offer those healthy cooking classes. So the dish that I showcased for this event, the one that you see me holding in the picture and the recipe that's been provided, was one that I did at the healthy cooking class. It might be like a couple years ago now. So, but I did that at the Fort Belvoir Center a while back.
Very cool. Now, how do you say the name of that recipe? Is it Faro or Faro?
Faro. So Faro it's a grain. It's kind of like a crossing like a wheat berry or that sort of thing. It almost looks like oatmeal almost, but it's a more rounded, like in between rice and that sort. It's a grain. So similar to any other grain, you simmer it for the allotted cooking time. Some of it's par cooked already if you buy it in the store. Some of it needs to be soaked and everything else. But that recipe, the reason why I showcase that is it can be really used with any grain. So I've made that same with quinoa. I've made it with couscous. I've made it, what else? Bulgur, any sort of grain can be used in that place, whatever you have on hand. So that's just the starch component of the dish.
Awesome.
And I can also add that the protein's interchangeable as well. I mean, your grilled chicken that we were talking about for your meal prep, even grilled salmon or roasted salmon, that sort of thing would be great on that dish. And those big bowls of different vegetables and grains and greens and things like that are another good meal prep thing, because you can make a lot of it and then put it in little containers and then add different proteins each day. That way you're not getting too burnt out on the same protein.
Can you just, circle back and kind of reiterate for us, if we're looking to eat healthier and make sure that we're getting all of our nutrients, what do we want to make sure is on our plate at every meal? A protein, a grain, a veggie, like what do we want to make sure that we have?
So I'm a big believer in having a good mix of protein, vegetables, and good quality carbohydrates. A lot of people say no carb, no carb. And I get it. There are certain diets that will not want you to eat carbs. And there are some extreme cases where if you do cut out certain things completely, you might see extreme results. But I'm going to go against the grain and say that I don't believe that that's a thing that can last for a long period of time. I'm a big fan of balanced meals and exercise. I think the combination of the two is a winning combination, 7 days a week. Now, everybody is different and everyone's situation is different. And I'm by no means a licensed or professional nutritionist or anything like that. But just based on the crews that I've had and providing them with meals and trying to keep them healthy, I've noticed that, good lean proteins, adequate vegetables, and good carbohydrates. And I'm talking your sweet potatoes, your whole grains, those sorts of things. Even there's nothing wrong with rice either. White rice gets a bad rap, and I think in moderation it is a good quality carbohydrate.
Can you remind us how white rice and brown rice are different and how they're the same?
So man, I got some chef buddies that might be upset with me if I butcher this. One of them had the basically like the outer shell stripped down, and it's almost bleached, well, not chemically, but stripped down. And the white rice is the one that's obviously stripped down. So brown rices tend to be a little bit more glutinous when you cook it. You notice that it's almost a little more gummy. That's why it's good to rinse it when you do that. So it's kind of like the difference between like a whole grain and then something that has been processed a bit. But again, I don't think that white rice in moderation is as bad as what people make it seem to be. Now, I wouldn't go around eating, bowls and bowls and bowls of nothing but white rice, but if you're balancing that with good vegetables and lean proteins and not dousing it with sugar-filled dressings and things like that, I think that you'll be just fine eating that.
I love it. You have clearly studied up and taken in a lot of education and resources in your time as a chef. So I'm just curious, do you have any mentors or chefs that you really look up to or have looked up to in your life?
Yeah, I have a lot of people that I look up to. There's two actually just spent a weekend with them, kind of doing almost like a little retreat, if you will, with some of our senior leadership and some of the mentors that we're working with our culinary team that we manage. So Justin Reed is a culinary specialist master chief down in Miami. He's been part of our CS program for a long time. Someone who I've worked with a lot and who's taught me a lot along the way and got me to where I'm at. And also Master Chief James Swenson, another Coast Guard Master Chief. He's been a mentor of mine since pretty much the day I joined the Coast Guard. And without those guys, I wouldn't be where I'm at for sure. But it's not always the people that are higher ranking than you that can be your mentors. I have plenty that are, my peers or, lower ranking than I am, I guess you can say, but by no means are they inferior to that. I could rattle them off forever, but Jason Rohr's one of the most talented chefs I know and learned a ton from him. Danielle Hughes, John Toman, list goes on. Matt Shaw, these are all guys doing culinary team stuff with us right now. On the other side, Navy or Air Force side of things, Army side of things, Sarah Deckert, doing a lot of work with her. She's just incredible talent and just I've just learned so much from so many people and very fortunate with the opportunities that I've been presented in my career. I'm sure I forgot a ton of people. Please don't hold it against me if you're listening and you didn't hear your name called.
Kind of put you on the spot with that
It's
one.
okay. I appreciate it.
So I'm gonna ask you to name drop if you can. You've talked about all the opportunities you've have and you've cooked in a lot of really neat places. Have you cooked for anyone famous or, what are some impressive names that you've gotten to cook for?
So previous to joining the Coast Guard, I was working in a spot down in South Florida where we did a lot of like in-house catering for a lot of like football teams and stuff that would come into the area. So being down there, we have the Miami Dolphins. So a lot of the teams that were coming in would come and hang out at this place and we would cook for them. So that was pretty cool. Just different NFL teams around 2000 and I don't know, 5, 6, that time frame. So just all the stars that were playing then, I'm not really into football as much as the next guy, but that was pretty neat. But during that time, I had somebody ask where the bathroom was. And I guess for a second forgot where I was working and there was always, some famous people there. And I said, you look just like Carlton from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And he just stopped and looked and he's like, that's because I am Carlton from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And he's like, don't ask me to do the dance. So that was pretty awesome. And then once I joined and started working in DC, I mean, you could imagine the opportunities that we get here, former presidents, current presidents, vice presidents, your top military leaders, a lot of people that work with the USO, doing different volunteer stuff have come over for dinners and things like that. So just everyone think about the, when they do the USO tours and things like that, so pretty much anyone who's involved with the USO. Rob Gronkowski, he was over for dinner one night, hanging out with Terry Bradshaw because they were hosting a big event. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, it just depends on the day,
That's so fun. I think it's really neat that you have fueled the forces, that you have fueled professional athletes and movers and shakers. I mean, you clearly know the right things to serve them, to keep them going. Along those same lines, now that the world is kind of opening back up and we're starting to invite people into our homes, What are some tips for easy and convenient entertaining when we want to have friends over again?
I think a good rule of thumb for that sort of thing is like not to overthink it. People like to eat tasty, fresh food. A grill is a really good component to utilize. Because you can grill vegetables, you can grill chicken, you can grill steaks, you can grill pretty much anything. Um, I think just being able to do things ahead of time. So if you have a dinner event or something that you're having people over for on Saturday, don't be afraid to start cooking stuff on Wednesday. Most foods have a long shelf life. So your proteins and stuff, you can get, grilled off on Wednesday or Thursday, and then the day of the event, pop them in the oven to finish up. The things you want to wait to cook, closer to would be your vegetables and stuff that have a little bit shorter of a shelf life. Um, but I think any of those types of things, and if you have the ability to vacuum seal stuff, just like a food saver or that sort of thing, will really help to save time and give you the opportunity to not be so rushed the day of the event. So my rule of thumb is have everything done the day before, and that way, when you're actually doing the event and you're hosting, all of your friends and family that are over hanging out are going to wonder, how did all this food get done? You haven't even been actively cooking this whole time, because all you're doing is reheating it at that point and serving them. And I'm one of those people that think leftovers taste better anyway. So good stuff to do for that. A lot of Italian foods reheat very well. A lot of Hispanic dishes reheat very well, and that's because it just gives time for flavors to build and that sort of thing. So when you reheat, it all comes together nicely, and you put out this beautiful lasagna or enchilada bake or things like that, and you're a hero for it. And you didn't have to take too much time away from them while you were hanging out.
I love it because we want to enjoy our company. We want to enjoy the
Exactly.
people with us. You don't want to
Right.
be the person standing over the stove the whole time when everyone
Yeah.
else is.
And then everyone else feels like they're obligated to help you because they want you to have a good time too. And then, now they're working. So do as much as you can the day before, and you'll be in a much better spot the day of the event.
I love that advice. Thank you for that. Hopefully everyone's taking notes. I wish I could be right now. I'm curious, Scott, do you have a favorite type of food when you're cooking just for yourself and your wife?
Um, it actually is one of those things that kind of like rotates. Like it just depends on the mood we're in. Like right now, we've been on a big Asian food kick. So I've been experimenting with different Asian foods and things like that. Sometimes it'll be, more of a Mexican. I really got into Mexican cuisine for a while, and we were eating at different spots, trying to learn, different flavor profiles and things like that to make like authentic Mexican food. So those would be the two I would say that most recently I really kind of dove into and worked on that.
So then when you go out to a restaurant, how do you decide what to eat? I mean, is there a certain thing you tend to lean to? Do you always get the steak? Do you always get the vegetarian option? I'm curious what a chef orders when someone else is cooking.
That's a really good question. I always joke that my favorite food is anything that I didn't have to cook. So, but when we go out to eat, we tend to lean more towards the things that you can't just throw together with common pantry ingredients, things that are a lot more involved. And I guess that's funny that I say that, 'cause I just talked about making Asian food and Mexican food, but those two, there's a lot of uncommon ingredients that go into making those dishes. So if you don't have them on hand, you might spend 3 or 4 times the amount of money as it would cost to go out and eat it, just to build up your pantry to be able to make it that first time. But once you make it the first time, have all those things on hand, and then it, obviously becomes a lot less expensive because you're not buying it every time that you need it. But yeah, my rule of thumb is if I can make it at home better than wherever I'm going to eat it, then I rather just make it at home. But it all depends on my mood. Usually a good burger is something that we seek out, just because there's nothing better than, after a long week, have a beer and a burger and just kind of hanging out and doing that you don't have to cook.
Preach. I love that.
We do a lot of taco salads, because you can kind of take whatever you have, left over from your meal prep, vegetables and lettuces and things like that. But then you can also change the dressing that you utilize. So you can take a basic ranch dressing that you already have in your fridge, and then sort of add some cumin, some paprika, some chili powder, maybe a little hot sauce, and kind of turn that into more of a Southwest ranch type of thing. And then make your ground beef that you would normally make for tacos, or your chicken that you'd make for tacos, let it cool. And then you have yourself a taco salad or a Mexican style salad, with some beans, some corn, and that sort of stuff. And you didn't have to go out and buy a ton of different things. So fusion in the sense of utilizing things that were used for maybe a non Mexican dish that now you're being able to bring in and incorporate it into that sort of thing. So when I first get to a new unit, this is talking like bigger Coast Guard stuff. I always ask the crew, and kind of get a tempo from them of who has different dietary restrictions and things like that. And while it could be a challenge, it also keeps us on our toes. So if I'm not familiar with it, then I make sure I do some research and learn about it, and then I talk to them. I mean, who's better at knowing, what they can eat and what they can't eat than the person that has the restriction themselves? So I just say, hey, what is it that you would like? What is it you don't like? And we'll do the best we can to make that happen. When you're out in the middle of the ocean, for weeks or months at a time, the one thing you have to look forward to is, a meal. So if we can make sure that we're giving everyone the type of thing that they enjoy eating, then we're doing our job right. Now, with that being said, if we have a 200-person crew, we can't make 200 individual meals. But we always do have, if there's vegans, a vegan option, pescatarians, a pescatarian option, that sort of thing. Now, in my current role, where I'm doing more of, private cooking and hosting dinner events and things like that, luckily we have a protocol team that knows, finds out everybody's dietary restrictions. And if the entree for that evening is, say, steak or some sort of beef, and they're vegetarian, then we try to find something that can utilize all of the other components that do not contain meat or animal products, and then swap out the main thing with some sort of uh, alternative that is similar. So for instance, we did a beef Wellington one night for the vegetarians that were with us. I think we had two that night. We did a butternut squash Wellington. So all the components were the same, except we didn't use beef for the middle of the Wellington, and we roasted some squash and still used mushrooms and everything else, and rolled it up in puff pastry. And had this beautiful Wellington that was made with butternut squash. So the main one, I think, is the utilization of that rotisserie chicken. I stand by that, using everything you can, from the meat that's there to taking the bones and making soup out of it. But also, if you're chopping vegetables for a dinner or whatnot, all the things that you are throwing away from those vegetables, most of the time they could be used in stocks and things like that. So, and you get a lot of nutrients out of them that way. So the ends of your onions, the peels of your onions, when you use the peeler on your carrots, the carrot peels, all of that stuff, obviously washed before you peel it, of course. Throw that all in there with your bones, and let it simmer for your desired amount of time. If you're doing chicken, it's usually 4 to 6 hours. Some will say it can go longer if you want more, but there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Also, things like just being mindful of what you have in your fridge. I think it's very common that you forget stuff in that bottom drawer, and you go to look for it and it's completely gone. So what we try to do at home is keep those things on the shelves and only put things in the drawers that aren't really as perishable. That way it's staring us in the face and we remember to use it, and that way we're not wasting it. Salmon. I like cooking salmon when I'm short on time, because they when you do seafood, it's a very short cooking time. So I'll just take almost like a whole side of salmon that you can pick up at pretty much any grocery store. You rub a little bit of olive oil on it, season it as you like. I'm a big salt, pepper, and garlic powder guy. You can even keep the skin on at this point. Line a pan with some foil or parchment paper. Get your oven going on about 400 or 425, and blast that salmon off in there. And rule of thumb is about 10 minutes per inch of thickness of fish. So your typical salmon, I would say, would be an inch, inch and a half. So maybe 15 minutes under 400 degrees, and you'll have a perfectly cooked piece of salmon. And then when you go to serve it, the skin will naturally stick to the foil or to the parchment paper as you take it off. And again, the frozen vegetable thing for me is a good go-to. And I just microwave them. I do. I throw them in the microwave, a little bit of water with a lid over top of it to kind of steam them, strain off the water, season it a little salt and pepper, and then go ahead and toss them in a saute pan if you'd like, with a little bit of butter or a little bit of olive oil, and then whatever grain that you're using that night. So I'll tend to cook off a lot of quinoa in the beginning of the week and just sort of have that in the fridge and pull from it. Another thing that we utilize is a lot of brown rice and some lentils and things like that. So keep that, because those are your longer cooking things. Keep those on hand, and then you can make your quick proteins as you need them.
I have a tag on question to that. I love to make rice ahead of time, or quinoa or couscous ahead of time, but my kids often tell me that it's really bland, and I just do the salt and pepper typically. So do you ever sauce your grains, or do you have a seasoning that you put on your grains, or any kind of tips to make those taste a little bit better?
So I don't really use a sauce for them, but what I'll do is I'll add a little salt to the water, and not as much salt as you would add when you're making pasta, because that's not absorbing really too much of it. But if you're doing a grain, it's absorbing the water. But just put a little pinch of salt in there, and then also you can utilize like low sodium stocks and things like that. So if you're making quinoa, instead of using water, use a no salt added chicken stock or that sort of thing, and that'll help add some flavor. Maybe a little teaspoon of butter thrown in there as well. And then when you're seasoning it afterwards, taste it first, because you're already going to get some salt from the chicken stock and whatnot. And add a little salt, pepper, garlic powder, and that should really help with the flavor.
Okay, thank you. I could see a couple people in the chat saying they do that too. So that's a really helpful tip. When people registered for today, when our attendees signed up, we asked them if they had any questions for you. So I'm going to read some of those in the hopes
Sure.
that they're joining us live and you can answer them. So Amy, who's an Air Force spouse in Hawaii, would like to know, what advice do you have for losing weight using some healthy food changes or substitutes?
Sure. I think making sure that you eat often and eat light is a good rule of thumb. Some people think that starving themselves and then only eating one big meal is the way to go about eating healthy. Actually, what happens is your body goes into like a starvation mode. And then when it does get food, it sort of stores that food as a way of thinking like, well, I don't know when I'm going to get this again, so I need to kind of hold on to it. But when you eat, 3 balanced meals and then a couple little snacks in between, it really does help to kind of keep your metabolism going. Big fan of whole grain oatmeal in the morning with a couple of hard boiled eggs. Egg yolks get a bad rap, but I think having one egg yolk with 2 hard boiled eggs, and you maybe knock the other 2 out, isn't really a bad idea. So I do a lot of overnight oats. Soak them the night before. I use like no sugar added unsweetened almond milk. I'm not a big fan of regular milk. Doesn't really do well for my digestive system. So I use almond milk or coconut milk or that sort of thing. And it's great because then you can throw in a scoop of your favorite protein powder. You can put nuts, raisins, that sort of thing, maybe a little touch of honey, and you have a nice balanced, healthy breakfast in the morning. Another thing is there's a lot of good calorie counters out there. You can get apps and you just log everything that you ate. And then it kind of just keeps you on track, and it helps you set goals for yourself. So if you say, I weigh X amount of pounds, but I want to weigh this amount of pounds, it'll tell you what the healthy time frame it is to get there, and then how many calories you should be consuming each day in order to obtain that goal. And then it also has you log your workouts and things like that. That way it's telling you when you're burning calories and then when you're gaining calories because you're eating, and then how much you can kind of allow yourself. So then, you get to your dinner and you're down, 400 less calories than you intend to take in for that day. And that's when you say, oh, I'll have a little extra of this or whatever. Or if you don't feel hungry and you feel good, it's it's a time where you're like, okay, I burned a little extra today. Maybe you made that many more strides towards your weight loss goal. So I think moderation is very important. I think as a society, we are very excessive people. So I think moderation is important.
I love that. Thank you. Here's a name that you've mentioned a few times already today, but Melvin, who's a Space Force spouse in DC, wants to know, what are your plans after the military? And do you plan on opening your own restaurant someday?
So I don't plan on opening my own restaurant as like a full-on restaurant. I've been involved in that a lot, and I know that it's a lot of work and a lot of stress that goes into it. However, I do want to open some sort of kitchen space that can be used as almost like a training type of environment, and be able to teach people that are in need of learning a new skill, for whatever the case might be, an opportunity to do so. And then they can utilize those skills in the workforce and try to be almost like a middle person to set people up with jobs in restaurants and kitchens and that sort of thing. Um, it's a loose idea at this point, but I have to kind of put some more thought into actually how I'm going to get there. But I still have 8 years left in the Coast Guard, so I have plenty of time to figure it out. There's a lot of like communal kitchens in different cities in the country that do similar stuff, and it's also kind of like a pay-as-you-go type service where whatever you can afford to pay, but everybody gets to eat type of thing. I'm a big believer in, there's only so much money that you need in life, and as long as you have the things that are necessary, and you're able to provide for your family and set up a future, then again, we're very excessive people. So I want to be able to give back in that sense, and I want to rescue a ton of dogs too. So maybe it's like this joint dog shelter / kitchen space. I don't know.
I love that. And then you can make dog food to make sure the
Hey,
dogs are well fed. Dining with dogs. I love that. Great idea. Very fun.
Who's not, who doesn't love hanging out with dogs, right?
I mean, if you have puppies, people will come. They really will.
Right. You're right.
All right. Audra, who is an Air Force spouse in North Carolina, wants to know, what gives you the most joy when you think about creating a dish?
The enjoyment that the person who is eating it is going to have as a result of it. That's why we cook. We cook for other people to enjoy. But with that being said, there's a lot of cooking that you do for yourself because things are awesome and delicious because of your experience. But does the person eating it think the same? So it's this kind of fine line that we balance as chefs of making good food, but also food that others are enjoying. We have a saying that you're only as good as your last dish, right? So, if you fall short today, doesn't matter what you did the last 1,000 times, today is what that person remembers. So.
Love it. Thank you. Camille is an Air Force spouse in Las Vegas, and she would like to know if you have some fast cooking tips, like spices, ingredients, techniques for efficient, delicious, healthy cooking.
So using saute pans and high heat cooking kind of just gets things done a little bit quicker, especially if you already have your proteins and stuff sort of ready to go because you've made a few of them ahead of time. But cutting up fresh vegetables don't require much cooking time because you do want them to still have sort of a bite to them as far as like the finished texture. So using bell peppers, onions, zucchini, squash, all those things that are in that bowl that I shared really just require a really hot pan, some salt, pepper, and a little bit of olive oil, and just blast them on high heat and just kind of keep them moving in that pan and get a little color on them. And in 30 seconds to a minute and a half, you have perfectly cooked vegetables. I think a big issue that people have is not using enough heat and being afraid of heat, and then also overcooking things. So don't be afraid to use a little heat and add a little color to your food.
I'm one of those people who's scared of using too much heat. I'm terrified that the smoke detector is going to go off and I'm going to set off all the alarms and then I'm going to burn the food. It's just a perpetual fear of mine. So I'm taking that to heart right now. We have a Coast Guard spouse, Stephanie in Norfolk, wants to know, do you have any tips for incorporating more vegetables into family meals?
I was just down in Norfolk for a retirement ceremony. More vegetables. So in soups is a good way to be able to hide vegetables if you have picky eaters. I'll do a lot of pureed soups for guys on the boat. Yes, we're all adults in the military, but some of our palates aren't as mature as others, and they tend to shy away from vegetables. So I will cook down a lot of vegetables for a soup and then throw it through my Vitamix blender that pretty much turns anything into a liquid at that point, and then mix that in with whatever protein and grains that I'm putting in there. And they don't realize that they just ate, 2 servings worth of fresh vegetables that are, pureed into their soup. So that's a good way to do it. I would avoid doing things like cheese sauces or, kind of any sort of heavy gravies and things that one might make it taste delicious, but you're kind of being, counterproductive in that sense, because you're masking a really healthy thing with something unhealthy. So that could be a bit of an issue. Good things that you could add to it though are simple vinaigrettes using like lemon juice and a little bit of olive oil or a little bit of vinegar. Lemon juice is a great way to season and add flavor. Combination of lemon and salt is a really nice way to enhance flavors of things and make them taste delicious without adding too much, calories and things like that.
Outstanding advice. Thank you. Going more on the advice route, Amelia, who's an Air Force spouse from Fort Hood, asks, how can I make sure leftover chicken still tastes fresh days later and isn't dry? So you talked about grilling it earlier, but maybe some storage tips or some seasoning tips there.
Yeah, a good way to store it. Like I was mentioning, if you have a food saver, a vacuum sealer, being able to limit the amount of oxygen that's touching the food is important. So even in like a airtight container is good, but you still have the residual air that was in there when you closed it off. So if you don't have a vacuum sealer, just taking a Ziploc bag and sort of like making sure you press out as much air as possible before closing it will help. You can get, I would say you can get 3-4 days out of grilled chicken with it still being juicy. Another good thing is to cook it just to temperature. So make sure you have a good instant read thermometer. You find really good fast read thermometers on Amazon for 15-20 bucks, and they'll last you forever. I have one that I've had for 5 or 6 years. I've never had to change the batteries on, and it just keeps doing its thing. So just look up your temperature charts for the different meats that you're cooking, and cook them, just about 5 degrees below that temperature, because you have what's going to, called carryover cooking, where it's still going to continue to rise in temperature. And then that way, when you heat it back up, you're not completely destroying it. So some people will say that it's okay to go a few degrees under that. That way, when you heat it back up, it comes up to that temperature that's safe. But I am not going on record recommending that, because I would never tell anyone to undercook their food.
Noted. And we have that in this recording. So I think you're safe on the record now. One more question from the spouses who registered ahead of time, and then we'll go back to the Q&A box live. Sheena at Fort Leavenworth wants to know, what is your favorite uncommon dish to make and eat?
Ooh, that's a good question. To make and eat uncommon. Well, it's gaining a lot more traction now, I would say. You get more and more places that are serving it, but I do like lengua a lot. It's like one of my favorite things to eat, which is beef tongue. I mean, it could be any tongue. Lengua is just tongue in Spanish, but traditionally beef tongue, and it's simmered for several hours until it's like fork tender pretty much. And then it's a little gross, but you peel off that tongue membrane, slice it up into small pieces, and then saute it until the outside's nice and crispy. And you can use it in tacos, you can use it in salads, you can use it however you want. And I describe the flavor as roast beef on steroids, like just a super, super rich concentrated beef. And you'll notice now, like more and more, Mexican places, even the ones that are a little bit more, that Tex-Mex style, that's not as authentic, will also have lengua on the menus now.
Amazing. I'm seeing so many spouses in the chat box agree with you. They've had it before. They love it with rice and gravy. So maybe I'm the only one who's never heard of it before. But
when you buy it in the supermarket, it's a little, little nerve-wracking to stare at this huge cow tongue. But when you order it in a restaurant, I think you would really enjoy it, even knowing what it is.
And knowing the person who prepped it knew what they were doing.
Exactly. So the most challenging to me would be just different types of Asian cuisine, Thai food, Japanese food, Korean food. It's one of those things that I feel like unless you have been exposed to somebody who makes it from either being from those countries or knowing someone that's from, like, just having that background, um, it always tastes like something's missing to me. Like and I don't know if it's just like a know-how of how to use these ingredients together. But that's been something that I've been working on a lot because I do find it to be very challenging to do. So yeah, that's been, I would say, the thing. But as far as things I like to make the most, I come from a half Italian, half Greek background, and I like to eat a lot of Italian and Greek food as a result of that. I don't cook as much Greek food as I would like, but the two are very similar in the sense that they use, a lot of olive oil and lemon juice and oregano and just different herbs and things like that. So tend to make a lot of Italian food. But nobody touches my knives, that's for sure. Those definitely come with me because over the years I've collected a pretty extensive set of really high quality, expensive knives. And that's the one thing that I do think is very important to have a good set of. Because a sharp knife is really the basis of good food, in my opinion. They can pretty much take anything else. Yeah, everything else I think is very replaceable in that sense. But my knives are coming with me for sure. If you want to become a military chef, I would really push people towards looking into the Coast Guard's program. And not just because I'm in the Coast Guard and I have no skin in the game, I get nothing for recruiting people. But we do a lot of everything we do is scratch cooking. There is no heat and serve. There are no, MRE. I mean, of course, that there's situations where MREs come into play depending on deployments and things like that. But that's not any way that we're sustaining our members on a daily basis for any amount of time, even on our ships and things like that. Everything is made from scratch. Everything is we have full control over the dishes that we're making, which I think is really cool. Our culinary program is an accredited culinary program. We also offer amazing bonuses. If you have a culinary degree and you enlist in the Coast Guard to become a culinary specialist, the Coast Guard will give you $40,000. It's 40. So a lot of money to entice already skilled culinarians to come into the Coast Guard. And then if you have no experience at all, they'll still give you a $20,000 signing bonus, which I think is pretty remarkable. It's been the greatest decision I ever made, even having a culinary background and joining when I did. I mean, there was no financial monetary bonus or things like that. I did it because I wanted to do it. And somebody explained to me that their program is really highly acclaimed, to other culinary schools and things like that. And I think as far as military chefs goes, that's the best way to get started, in my opinion. And if you're on the civilian side, I think just get into a restaurant and show that you are eager to learn and that nothing is beneath you. We all start from the bottom and work our way up. And the harder you work, the more opportunities are going to be put in front of you to do awesome things. So I know from my experience, like I said, I started bussing tables and washing dishes at 14 years old. And before I knew it, I was running the pass in the expo line at a restaurant, and kind of just worked my way up to that, through all the different avenues.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end it than on that note. That was incredibly motivating. So on behalf of the USO Military Spouse and Family Team, I want to thank you, Chef Jefferies, for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out of your hectic schedule to be with us and to share so much advice with us. I think I speak for everyone when I say we learned a lot, and we're going to take a lot away from this. So thank you so much for being here with us.
You're very welcome. And again, thank you for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun, and look forward to more USO events in the future.
And we'll see you next time on Coffee Connection Live.